Well, hello there, imagination connoisseurs, and welcome to another Road Trippin' with R&B podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bodden, and you're listening to our podcast for Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. We're glad you're here. As you know, Rob and I chat every weekday while he's on the road to the John Campea studio, where he does his YouTube thing with John Campea and the rest of the Campea crew. You should watch their shows, Mailbag, the Campea Show, all that stuff. Great stuff on YouTube. Love it. Try to catch it every day. But what Rob and I talk about isn't always what he's going to talk about on the Campea Show. Now, today might be a slight exception, because today we're going to be talking a little bit about the upheaval at Warner Brothers and the fact that with the departure of Toby Emmerich, there's a lot to be rethought with regard to the DC cinematic universe. We're going to talk Flash, we're going to talk about other DC properties, and maybe brainstorm a couple of ways that DC can go about presenting their characters, their situations, and their stories that will make it different from Marvel and just as entertaining. Certainly, they have the potential to do so. The question is, will they do it? You know what? It's the kind of stuff imagination connoisseurs like to talk about, and that's what we are. We hope you'll come and join us on our online community, the Post Geek Singularity. You'll find us online at postgeeksingularity.com. You'll also find us on social media. And now these podcasts will also be shared in the PGS YouTube page. So lots of good stuff. This conversation goes about 45 to 50 minutes. It's not too terribly long. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you'll join us again tomorrow when we do this again. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we? Let's go ahead and make that phone call to Rob and see what he has to say from somewhere on the roads of Southern California.
Well, good morning, Mike. As I am wheeling my way once again in the car to the John Campea studios.
Well, hello, Rob. I think we need to come up with a name for your vehicle. Like, you know how they had the mobile units on UFO? We need to come up with that needs to be like the Robile unit or something like that. Robile 1.
We'll have to work on that. I can't come up with it right off the bat.
Well, and I think,
you know what, Mike? We should throw it out to our listeners.
We should.
What should we name my Prius Prime, my 2022 Toyota Prius Prime? What should we call it? I asked the viewers. I'd prefer to have like Robservatory, Rob something in the name, but it better be good. If it's stupid, we're going to make fun of you mercilessly on the air.
That's right. Absolutely. I'll Photoshop your head onto something obnoxious. There we go. And we'll put that on the website. Oh, also, one other thing, too, before we get started, I think you'd probably like to know this. You know that we go ahead after we record the podcast, I put it up, and it ends up on all the different podcasting platforms around the world via the interwebs. We had a request come in last night from a imagination connoisseur who follows you on YouTube and asked if we'd also be able to put the podcast on our YouTube channel, and we can. So we are starting to do that now. This podcast will also be available on the days that we record it and post it. I'll put the podcast up then on the YouTube channel as well. So
I think it should be. I think it's a good idea, because why not?
Absolutely. And with all the letters that we had, that we talked about and discussed yesterday, those are individual letter posts on the postgeeksingularity.com website as well. So there is so much road tripping goodness out there in the PGS right now. It's fun, but.
Yeah, and the first question people are going to be like is, Rob, why don't you get a microphone to talk into? And I'm like, because I've got my newfangled car where I can just talk.
There you go. That's right.
Speak. I got it's hands-free. I'm driving, and I don't even know if there's a microphone somewhere in this car. I'm just talking through my phone. But either way,
it sounds great, though.
Part of I think the limitations are what make it authentic.
Oh, I do too. I mean, it adds a little production value, and quite honestly,
That's a rationalization, but there you go.
But quite honestly, other than the occasional dead spot that you drive through, and the fact that I think we're now on a first name basis with the drive-through people at Starbucks, it sounds pretty good. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, not this morning though. No Starbucks this morning.
Oh,
little lean on the budgetary at the beginning of the month, Mike.
Oh, I understand how that goes. Need to hit John Campy up for a little more of that cheddar.
Well, so I'm waiting for it.
There you go.
We'll see.
But that's good. Hey, and you guys have been killing it on the Campia show, by the way. It's been highly entertaining to watch. So hopefully we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having more fun on that show than I've ever had being on YouTube in 7 years. Although I'm going to get back to regular observations. I really need my old computer back, but I've worked out some things. So
good.
I need my old computer back to edit.
Yes.
But we will. I want to start going back, at least doing 3 observations a week.
That would be fabulous. Well, I know that you'll have imagination connoisseurs worldwide. Glad to hear that. Road tripping is fun, but it's a very static image on the screen right now if you're watching this on YouTube.
But that's okay because that's all it is. It's a podcast that we're putting up to listen to. So,
yeah.
There you go.
So, but people listen to us because they expect us to talk about something and not just about ourselves. So, what do you want to talk about? I've got something I'd like to talk about because I was amazed by this article I read in Variety, but I'll let you go first. Do you have anything in particular you want to touch on?
You brought this article up. I have yet to read it, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it today on the show. So I'm curious. I mean, you gave me a little bit of an overview of it, and look, there was a massive shakeup at Warner Brothers yesterday.
Yes.
As we call it on the John Campy show, the axe of Zaslev fell. In a big way, and I'll tell you, I'm going to talk about this next for observations. But they got rid of Toby Emmerich.
Yes,
and they gave him what all studio heads get when their time is over. You get a juicy production deal, and maybe Toby Emmerich will be able to produce movies. But I did contact our industry insider, our very well placed, very successful industry insider, who was no fan of Mr. Emmerich's and thought this was a long time coming. And look, Mike DeLuca is very respected. What's interesting is Mike DeLuca began his career at New Line.
Really?
As a junior executive. Yes, I met Mike DeLuca in 1989 when I was working on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. And now he's running the motion picture division of Warner Brothers. Co-running it, and I was always impressed by him. He actually, interesting tidbit about Mike DeLuca, he actually wrote the screenplay to the John Carpenter movie In the Mouth of Madness. A lot of people don't remember that, or that he did. But he did.
Well, there you have it. So, one of the things I know that Emmerich has been involved in is all of this DC content appearing from Warner Brothers, and we have a big DC kind of watershed moment planned for about a year from now, right? With the new Flash movie that's supposed to be coming out. My as we were talking about things, the article that appeared in Variety, and I'll make sure that there's a link to this both on our podcast and on our blog and on the YouTube channel, but there's an article in Variety that says, as Ezra Miller scandals mount, what options does Warner Brothers have for The Flash? And what I see here is this is a potential issue that's even bigger than Ezra Miller, but once again, in the DC universe, The Flash seems to be the fulcrum on which all of this turns. You've got Toby Emmerich going away. You've got new leadership coming in that doesn't always portend good things for pet projects of the previous administration. But as Rob, as you and I had discussed, this project's too far over the dam. All the footage has been shot. It's wrap production. It's in the final throes of getting ready for the whole marketing campaign. They're going to have to run with this, excuse the pun, they're going to have to run with this Flash movie, right? Because too much is riding on either not running it or shuffling it off to HBO or, God forbid, trying to recast Ezra Miller. I mean, I don't see how you could do that at this point.
They would double the production budget of the film. Yeah. I mean, in terms of they're deep into post on this movie, visual effects. They'd essentially have to reshoot the entire film.
Ooh.
And they're not going to do it. But, I would say this, Mike. I think, from what I understand, and I don't want to get into much of it, but Ezra Miller's been going through a difficult time personally, and I think a lot of this has to do with his behavior. And I think, look, there's still a year until this movie comes out. I think Ezra Miller will eventually get the help that he needs right now, and he can throw himself on the mercy of the court because obviously he's had a pretty good career over the last decade, and he'll want to keep it. And I think people would understand from what it became common knowledge about what he's been going through. People would understand in him a little bit more. But yeah, it looks bad now. And look, he hasn't killed anybody. He's yet, but it's. I think in a year from now, people have short memories. I mean, there'll be a lot of people that probably how can you allow Ezra Miller to get away with blah blah blah? I think the person is.
Oh, you're breaking up there. You broke up on me there. What was that?
Oh, I just think that the person that's. By the way, I'm going through the worst part of the drive. This dead spot where I'm literally going. I'm sure I'm changing over cell towers, and that's why I lose the transmission here. Which is, I wish there was a different way I could go. But I think Amber Heard will benefit because they'll keep her in Aquaman 2.
Right.
Because it's. I find it unfortunate, Mike, that our culture is more obsessed with the Depp Heard trial than what is going on politically or economically or socially in this country. But here we are, no surprise.
Right. Well, and Hollywood has always kind of served as that sort of cultural distraction. I mean, there certainly have been plenty of scandals in the past, going back generations as far as American society and pop culture taking their eye off of the ball and maybe the things that are really important for the long term, and instead focusing more on, questions as to who is what young thing is Rock Hudson dating this time, not ever realizing Rock Hudson was gay, or what sort of shenanigans is Orson Welles up to now? The boy wonder who only produced one movie that anyone can ever seem to recall. So.
Oh, come on, man! You know what? He made some other good movies.
Oh, I'm a huge Welles fan. At both of the Mercury Theater, the Air stuff that he did in the original War of the Worlds.
Touch of Evil. Charlton Heston playing a Mexican.
Magnificent Ambersons. There's all kinds of great Orson Welles films, but I would say in the pop culture, in the popular zeitgeist that's out there, they only think of Citizen Kane. So, but that's just
that's not bad. That's not bad if that's all you think about.
That's right. That's a conversation for another day where we can talk about truly classic movies.
No, but I think it is a difficult spot to be in. And I rightly film that somebody's investing $200 million into. I think especially when you're top lining that movie, when you're front and center, the star of that film, which they hope would be a franchise, you're still working for them, rightly or wrongly, until that movie comes out.
Right.
You've got to lead your life on the straight and narrow. You don't have. There's thousands of people that will have worked on that film, not just the main crew, but all the effects people, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people in India that are probably working on that movie right now, and you sort of owe them, and that is, if you want to lead that life, and you expect Warner Brothers. I mean, he was cast briefly in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. He then went on to play Flash in Justice League, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League, where they added more of his part back. I mean, he's got a great thing going, and you would hope that he would realize this in terms of his behavior. You'd be on the straight and narrow. But as I said, I understand things in his personal life have added to that. I'm not trying to excuse his behavior, but it's still like Warner Brothers is fun. Of course, now that they got rid of Toby Emmerich, I've also heard that Toby Emmerich was protecting Ezra Miller.
Right.
And was now they're not going to have such a sympathetic eye. The acts of Zaslav, I think they're making. I like what's going on at Warner Brothers. I think they are doing exactly what they need to do. I think Warner Brothers needed people to come in and take decisive action. And I think Mike DeLuca is much more focused on filmmaking than being Mike DeLuca.
Right.
I think Mike DeLuca's. It's funny because they both were at New Line together. I just think that Warner Brothers will be a better place with someone like DeLuca in charge rather than Toby Emmerich being in charge.
So, what do you think with a DeLuca and Abdi kind of co-management of Warner Brothers? What do you think that might mean for DC? I mean, if the Flash movie comes off and Ezra Miller is able to keep their head, together and keep their act together and not end up, being in the eye of some sort of social media storm, which, maybe is asking too much. I don't know. But if everything goes right going up to the Flash movie when it comes out in a year, with the momentum that might be contributed from what I think looks like a pretty amazing Black Adam movie. I mean, frickin' Pierce Brosnan looks amazing as Dr. Fate. I'm wanting a Dr. Fate movie now. And Aquaman 2 is bound to be immensely entertaining, just with Jason Momoa and just the wild and wacky world of Atlantis that we saw in the first movie. What does...
Yeah, well, I think that Warner Brothers is... Here's the thing. We as the audience are comparing and contrasting DC and Marvel product. And why wouldn't we? They're both comic books. I think that the idea of a shared DC universe is kind of off the table. Okay. They can do it if they want. I think their philosophy is, I think, the correct one now, which is forget about your shared Marvel Cinematic Universe. Joker made $1 billion on a $65 million spend. Aquaman, the first one, made $1 billion. Concentrate on individual movies. Don't worry about your crossovers. If you want to make The Flash and set it in the multiverse, you can. But this idea that you're going to have some interlocking cinematic universe should be off the table. Marvel has, with Thor Love and Thunder, that is their 29th interlocked feature. You're never going to catch up to that. You don't have the visionary and Kevin Feige and his team of Victoria Alonso and Louis D'Esposito to do. You don't have that.
Right. So
don't try and recreate it. I mean, I understand from a monetary standpoint, but if you look at Aquaman and Joker, and especially Joker, you made $1 billion on a $65 million spend.
That's amazing.
That is an enormously profitable studio film.
Yeah.
That's the direction that you should be going in. And, concentrate on hiring auteurist directors, which is something Marvel doesn't do. I mean, I guess you could say they did Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi hadn't made a movie in 7 years, but concentrate instead on great talent to make great movies and fuck that idea of a shared universe. Right. You don't need it.
Well, and if you use it as seasoning on top. You don't make it the main driving factor. I mean, there is...
No.
It is interesting to see, and we've talked a little bit about this before, Marvel's catalog of 20,000 plus comic books lends itself to that shared universe, meta story approach much better than DC's does. DC for decades were producing comics that were literally... if they were a series, it was like 3 or 4 issue series inside a certain title. There wasn't nearly the amount of crossover, and there was much more standalone storytelling in individual books with DC. So you can do more like what we're talking about here with saying, you want to make a Batman movie, make a Batman movie. And it doesn't, as the Variety article points out, at Warner's, apparently the discussion is it doesn't really matter so much who the actor is anymore. That people buy the character. They're more interested in the character and what that character does than necessarily who the actor is that's playing them. Now, I think that in Joaquin Phoenix's case with the Joker, he was amazing as that Joker, and deserved the praise and the awards and everything that he got for it. But for the most part, I can see that. I mean, there certainly have been Batman movies in the past that would have been bad no matter who Batman was.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's where to go. I mean, and you can't. I mean, I understand the people at Warner Brothers, I'm sure the shareholders point to Marvel's success, but I would say, DC is making far less. They have far less of a superhero output now. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're certainly ramping it up, but that doesn't mean they can't have an equal amount of success.
Right.
Marvel never made a movie that only cost $65 million that grossed $1 billion.
No,
they've never done that. And I would say that you look into that kind of thing, and that's kind of where we're at. And I mean, the Ezra Miller situation, it comes down to, is the audience out there going to stay away because it's Ezra Miller being a crazy person? Well, that remains to be seen, but I don't believe so. I mean, right. I think, again, a mea culpa or whatever, and mea culpa, that people will be accepting of it. Especially, you got Michael Keaton coming back as Batman. Ben Affleck is rumored to be in it, so it can still be a great movie, and I think people are willing to overlook that shit.
I would agree with that.
Especially if you come out with a good if Ezra Miller throws himself on the mercy of public opinion, and if the movie's good, does it really matter what people's personal lives are like? I mean, he's not Fatty Arbuckle.
Oh yeah. Well, Fatty was eventually exonerated.
That's true. He was.
And now we have 95% of the imagination connoisseurs out there going like, "Who the hell's Fatty Arbuckle?"
Yeah, well, they should. That's what Google's for, Mike.
That's right. And honestly,
it only takes a few keystrokes, and you can get the answer.
That is an amazing. That whole Fatty Arbuckle story is an amazing story of early Hollywood. Yep. So, and if you, like me, are big into historical dramas and things like that, if you watched the first season of the Perry Mason streaming series that's just remarkable. It's really great. There is a bit of that Fatty Arbuckle story worked into that's what Mason is investigating as a private eye before he becomes an attorney. So lots of fun stuff. So
yeah, and again, people are like, Perry Mason.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what was running through my head as I was saying
series?
That. Yeah, the HBO series. Yep. Yeah, that is really good, and a new season's supposed to be coming out here shortly. So I'm looking forward to that. But I like that kind of old-timey stuff. That's my jam.
Well, I mean, look, I still suggest that everybody should watch The Twilight Zone if they want to understand how to tell a story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, the best Twilight Zone episodes in 22 minutes establish character and story and tell a full story with a beginning, a middle, and an end in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of learning how to write, it doesn't get much better. If you really want to study how to write a story, Twilight Zone is a great lesson, a great teacher.
Well, and there was a lot of that discipline too that came from folks who used to have to write for radio. They had a half hour to tell a radio drama and no pictures. So you had to figure out how to suspend that disbelief on a whole new level, with no VFX budget.
Yeah, interesting. Like, it's funny because now we're in a world. I find this odd that we're in a world now where people. I get this a lot more that. Oh, Rob, you're just an old man shouting at clouds. You know, that Simpsons meme that people send me on a daily basis, and each one of them thinks that's so clever. And I don't want to. I would never want to say to somebody. Well, now it's getting to the point where I've been saying it, but you know, if someone's going to take the time to send me anything, I'm appreciative. But it's like each one of those people think I'm going to send Rob Burnett that Simpsons meme of an old man yelling at clouds, and you know, everyone thinks they're the first person to do it. So, you know, far be it for me to go, wow. Although I am doing it now. I mean, after you've got it sent to you 1,000 times, it's like, okay, that's clever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you go back and you do listen to, whether you're listening to old time radio shows, and I grew up listening to CBS Radio Mystery Theater, or you're watching the writing in shows like Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and classic Star Trek, even but especially Twilight Zone. The best of the Twilight Zone episodes are some of not just the best television of the time; it's the best television of all time.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, those stories they're classics for a reason. And you know, I love, like, the younger generation, people that haven't seen every episode of The Simpsons yet because it's 10,000 years old. They and when they come to those episodes fresh, they're always surprised by them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now there's such pop culture artifacts that they've been parodied and made fun of so many different times. But you know, if someone hasn't seen Nightmare at 20,000 Feet and you show it to them, it's surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Or you watch It's a Good Life and it's still chilling.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Well, there's some classic twists, and you're right. They've become so many others have referred to them that they've almost become cliche. But what's really important when you're watching those things, those dramas, you know, in their original form, you need to keep in mind just how earth-shattering so much of that was, and how life-changing it was. And that's what good writing can do. And you know, good writing can absolutely take people away. You know, you get people to go ahead and completely surrender to a story, and they get so enthralled with it that it can create a visceral, physical reaction. I remember I did a documentary when I was in college about the life of John Houseman, who was at the time filming The Paper Chase. And when I was working in LA my senior year, I actually went to the set a few times and sat with Houseman and interviewed him and did all the prep work for the documentary. And then back at school in Dallas that spring semester, Houseman and a bunch of his friends came over. And when he brought his friends, it was people like Kevin Kline and James Bridges and Norman Lloyd, and you know, I mean, some pretty amazing, talented people. But I remember talking with Houseman about his time with Orson Welles on the Mercury Theater of the Air, and some of the things that they did in order to create the effects, just even on the radio side. You know, the sound of but this is fairly well known, but like the sound of the capsules opening so that the Martians can, you know, come out or whatever was actually unscrewing like mason jars and stuff like that in a toilet in the restroom, you know, to kind of create that grating sound. But keep in mind, and a lot of people forget this, when War of the Worlds aired on radio the very first time, there were people in a panic in New Jersey trying to flee because they were sure that what they were hearing was real-time documentation of a planetary invasion. And again, that's what good writing and good performances, good drama can do. That it happens sometimes when you go to stage shows and things like that, but it's amazing when you see that kind of thing happen, you know, or when it happens to you in the movie theater. I remember watching Pulp Fiction And that scene where Travolta has to take that needle and jam it into Uma Thurman's chest. Oh my God. Oh, frickin' A, man. Tarantino's just amazing. But, you know, there are things that you can do that just seem to be so unexpected. You just can't believe that they're going to go there. And then when they do, it's like a breakthrough. And it's really amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's what great storytelling is. And, you know, it's funny it's funny that I now sort of have a reputation amongst certain people that I hate everything, you know, and I don't. I mean, I come down hard on Star Trek, and I am critical of Star Wars. But we were talking about, you know, earlier, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Yesterday, John got mad at me a little bit because I was talking about Obi-Wan, and I said the show lacked narrative thrust.
Right.
And I'm like, stuff is happening in it, but from a storytelling standpoint, the way a story is told, you can tell a lethargic story or you can tell a breakneck, fast-paced story, and they both can be about the same thing. And I'm like, you know, the Star Wars, which came out 45 years ago, was about Han Solo, Ben Kenobi, and Luke Skywalker going off to rescue Princess Leia.
Right.
And the first 3 episodes of Kenobi, which are now longer than Star Wars, is about Kenobi going to rescue Princess Leia. And you have Darth Vader, you know, and the Inquisitors or whatever, and you look at those things and you're like, okay, well, Rob, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi, 6 episodes. I'm like, okay, great. Look at Star Wars and look at the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Somebody even said, I think it was I saw a YouTube comment that Kenobi is better than Star Wars. And I'm like, okay, first of all, anyone who would say that, I'm sorry, but as you know, I do not believe everything is objective. Subjective.
Right.
I do not believe art is subjective for everybody. Because that means that everyone's opinion is equal.
Right.
And I'm like, if something works for you, that's great. That's great. And everybody has their own opinion, and everyone's opinions are subjective. But that doesn't mean everyone can recognize whether art is great or not. I believe that there is objectively great things about storytelling, about art, about a lot of things. And John always argues that, well, how do you measure those things? And I'm like, one day we will. One day we'll be able to map the human brain, and if you were to put whatever that machine is that'll eventually be able to do that, and you show people, say, a movie, you'll be able to grade that film based on people's mental reactions to it. Like, I would be willing to say that pick action movies. If we ever had just because we don't have the tools to measure these things right now doesn't mean they're not measurable. Well, eventually we're going to figure out how consciousness works more and more, and we'll be able to quantify it, and you'll be able to see, and people will be different. There are people that will like different things and things that strike them in certain ways, but I do believe that ultimately there are going to be things like, and I've always said, like a sunset. When you watch a sunset, or you see a dog or a baby, there are things that, and yeah, there are people that it doesn't affect. But for the majority of the population, I'll bet you'll be able to quantify and measure the reaction of certain things on the human psyche. We just don't have that yet. We don't have those tools. And when we do, we will be able to see that there are, and if a story is well told, there's a reason why you can make a list of the 100 greatest movies of all time.
Right.
Or the 100 greatest paintings. There's a reason why that's true. Because a majority of people feel this way. And why do the majority of people feel this way? Because there's something objective going on. Now, you're never going to get 100% consensus. But, and if somebody doesn't like something, great. They might not like something for them, but that doesn't mean that the thing that they don't like isn't objectively great. And that's what I would say. And I always have this argument with John, and he doesn't like dissent on this topic, but and I get that. But I mean, the fact is, not everyone's opinion is equal. I mean, it's like we were talking about going to the symphony. If you go to the symphony and you don't know anything about it, you don't know anything about the music, you don't know anything about music in general, you don't know anything about the history of the composition or the work or what it's about, you are incapable of getting out of that piece of music what you could if you knew more about it.
Oh, exactly.
And the thing is, there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the more educated you are about the thing that you are experiencing, the better off you, the more you're going to get out of it. Because, when you don't know what it is, it's just noise.
But that's true. If you think about it, that's really true about how you should experience everything. Whether it's a good meal, a fine wine, a finely tuned automobile, a jazz performance, a stage play, a good book, a well-written news article. I mean, all of these things, the better informed you are, the richer the experience is, and the more you can pull, the more enjoyment you can pull from it.
Exactly right. And it's what we were talking about on this show repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
You make your own meaning.
Right.
And if you just sit back and expect something to do it for you without any kind of context, sometimes it will. Sometimes it absolutely will do that. But for the most part, it's a requirement of being alive on planet Earth and being a human being. You're only going to get out of your life what you put into your life.
Right.
And look, some people may fail miserably, but that's true. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to attempt things and they don't have the background they need to succeed. And you lead a life of quiet desperation, but I'll tell you one thing, the more you know about whatever it is you want to do, the better off you're going to be 100% of the time.
Right.
And the same is true of art and storytelling. A lot of people it's funny to me because I do not care where a story begins. I don't care if it's set in the Middle Ages. I don't care if it's set in the future. I don't care if it's set in Rome at its height.
Mm-hmm.
Don't care. But there are people that do. There are people that will tune out. Like, I don't want to watch a historical period drama. I'm not going to watch this shit. and immediately they tune out. So they will not allow that story to work its magic on them, even if it's the greatest story ever told.
Right.
It's Lawrence of Arabia. I don't care. It's set in the Middle East. Whatever.
Yeah.
Gee, Lawrence, fuck that guy.
I
want to watch a John Wayne movie. That's what I want to see. And it's then you can't. That's another thing. That's why I don't buy this thing that everybody has their own subjective opinion, but not everybody's opinion is even worth listening to.
Right. Well, it's very often people confuse the right to free speech with the right to not listen. Just because you've got the freedom of speech doesn't mean I'm obligated to listen to what you have to say. And as evidenced, hopefully not by this podcast, but by some of the other things that we've seen get produced. I think it's perfectly okay, though, for people to say, I'm just not a fan of that thing. And you can let people know that, but you don't necessarily have to blow things up and attack people who do like that thing.
I totally agree with that. I mean, if you don't like something, you don't have to like it. Just say you don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. I think that's what your prerogative is a sovereign individual on planet Earth.
And the corollary...
But then don't turn around and try and get in the front of someone else's enjoyment of that very thing.
Right. And the corollary to that is that if you ask someone why they don't like something, be prepared for an answer to hear an answer you may not agree with, but that's not an invitation to begin lecturing them to get them to change their mind.
Right.
And that's very often what we see happening on social media. It's what we're trying to continually moderate, in our Facebook and Discord groups and things like that, to make sure that imagination connoisseurs know it's okay to not like something. And it's okay to say you don't like something, but don't start berating people who disagree with you. That's not okay. And that's
no. And the thing is, healthy disagreement is a good thing. You know, that kind of a critical discourse discussing whether or not you like Obi-Wan Kenobi is a good. There's no reason to get mad at somebody about it. I would say Obi-Wan Kenobi is a TV series that spends a majority of so far its running time of Obi-Wan Kenobi going to rescue Princess Leia. Mm-hmm. And I would say, why is that the story you're telling? We saw him go rescue Princess Leia in Star Wars. You couldn't come up with anything else? You couldn't look at the story of it, to pick any samurai movie and go tell that story? Mm-hmm. As long as you're not looking at Hidden Fortress again. But I mean,
but you and I talked about it. It's like if I was told you got a 10 or 12-year-old girl and a middle-aged guy and they need to have an adventure, I'd look at Leon the Professional. Man, I'd love to see a story like that.
Or Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, it's frustrating. Mike, I have arrived at my destination.
Oh my God, I cannot believe it. Rob,
I know.
We just always run out of time, but it's so much fun. So, and you know what we did not have today? We did not have any letters today. I can't believe it. We did. We actually got quite a few Robservation letters and some Let's Get Physical Media letters off the website in the last 24 hours, but nothing makes me cry. No road tripping letters. So we need people to send us letters, Rob.
And where can they send us letters,
You know,
Mike?
if they go to the postgeeksingularity.com website and they click on that button that says send a show a letter, you'll go to a form. There's a little drop-down menu. You click on that and you will see Road Trippin' with RMB. You go ahead and pick that as your subject line, type in your special message, hit send, and no kidding, within 90 seconds, it shows up in my inbox, and then Rob and I will review it in our next podcast. So it'd be fun.
Yeah, we might read it aloud and answer you on the air.
That's right. That's right.
Free of charge, Mike. Free of charge. You don't have to super chat or tip or be a member. Free of charge.
That's right. That's right. And don't forget, I'm posting these now when we get them done. I'm putting them up on the Post Geek Singularity YouTube channel, so you'll be able to go ahead and listen that way, as well as off of any of our podcasting platforms that we distribute to. And around 8 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Pacific Time, I post a longer blog version related to today's subject. So, and Rob, by the way, thank you very much. You tweeted out the yesterday's topic, and we ended up with about 40% more web traffic as a result of that. People really wanted to have a chance to hear what you were thinking about those issues that we talked about yesterday. So it was good stuff.
All right, sir. Well, I will take my leave of you now, and I will say goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
We will chat mañana.
Have fun. You bet. We'll talk to you tomorrow, buddy.
All right, I'll see you.
Yep, see you. Bye. Well, I think it's safe to say that brings us to the end of the road for Rob, and that'll be the end of the road for today's Road Trippin' with RMB podcast for Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. Road Trippin' is a production of Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited LLC and is transmitted throughout the Post Geek Singularity from our studios located on Krypton. You can find Road Trippin' on your favorite podcasting platform and on our website, postgeeksingularity.com, and now on the PGS YouTube channel. We also put links to our podcast on all of our social media accounts. You'll find the PGS on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, Tumblr, and Discord. Don't forget, if you're interested in chatting with other Imagination Connoisseurs, you can do that on our Discord server. Just go to the website, click on any of the links that say take me to the online community or discuss this in the online community. That'll take you to our Discord server. You can sign up or you can just visit as a guest. Either way, there are dozens of message boards there and hundreds of Imagination Connoisseurs talking about the things that we all like to talk about. Genre entertainment, baby. Sci-fi, fantasy, horror, the whole 9 yards. You can also sign up to get an email newsletter or 2 or 3 or 1 a day. Frankly, as far as that goes. They're free. They don't cost you anything. You can always unsubscribe and resubscribe later if you're getting too much email. But we'd love to have you kind of in the loop as to what's going on inside the Post Geek Singularity, and that's a great way to do it.
And as always, as we mentioned earlier, we want to hear from you. You can do that by sending us a letter. Go to our website, postgeeksingularity.com, and on the homepage, there's a button that says Send the Show a Letter. Click on the button, send us an email. We'll make sure that we discuss it in an upcoming Road Tripping podcast. So that will wrap it up for me today. Thank you so much for joining us today and spending some part of your day with us. Don't forget, you can check out all of the Road Tripping podcasts on our website, and now soon on our YouTube channel. We'll be doing this again, though, tomorrow, so I hope you'll have a chance to listen to us. Until then, I'm Mike Bawden. I'll talk to you later. Bye.